Right now, in this very moment, someone weaker than you is winning. And it's not because they're smarter. It's not because they're more talented. It's not because they've earned it more than you. They're winning because they've mastered the one thing you keep hesitating with: certainty. They speak like they belong. They act as if the world already owes them a place. They move without permission, and the world responds to that certainty as if it were law. Meanwhile, what do? You hesitate. You overthink. You wait for the right moment, the perfect opportunity, the exact words. You tell yourself you'll act when it feels right. And while you wait, someone else takes what should have been yours. This is the brutal reality. Confidence is not a feeling. Confidence is not something you wait to have. Confidence is a weapon. And if you don't carry it, someone else will use it against you. Machiavelli knew this centuries ago. The bold get ahead, even if they lack the skill. The hesitant stay behind, no matter how brilliant they are. Because in the game of power, victory doesn't go to the best. It goes to the most certain. So understand this. This is not a video for motivation. This is not about making you feel good. This is about control. This is about transformation. And that transformation starts with a brutal truth. You were not born weak. You were made weak. Society trained you. Your parents, your teachers, your bosses. They conditioned you to obey. They rewarded you for being polite. They punished you for being defiant. They taught you to seek approval, to wait for permission, to ask, "Is this okay?" What you call your personality right now, that isn't the real you. That's the servant inside of you, the obedient version of you, a loyal dog trained to flinch at judgment and beg for approval. Think about it. That voice in your head, the one that hesitates, that apologizes before speaking, that explains itself endlessly, that's not you. That's your inner servant. And if you don't kill him, you will never be free. Machiavelli didn't whisper. He commanded. He didn't wait for permission. He acted. He didn't ask to be understood. He forced others to catch up. He didn't request power. He seized it. Because he knew those who ask do not deserve. And so, your transformation begins with inversion. From now on, every time you feel yourself shrinking, expand. Every time you want to explain yourself, pause. Every time you want to apologize, stare instead. Because dangerous confidence is not born from being ready. It's born from doing what your inner servant would never dare. You start walking faster. You take up more space. You stop nodding. You stop softening your tone. You stop letting your words sound like suggestions, and you start making them sound like decisions. Confidence is not a mindset. It's not a trick you play in your head. It's an identity. It's who you decide to be. And that identity is forged in defiance. Not defiance against the world. Defiance against the weak, obedient version of yourself. So here's your first rule. If it makes you small, kill it. If it makes you hesitate, confront it. If it makes you weak, deny it. If it begs to be liked, laugh at it. The world will tell you to be kind, to be polite, to be nice. But here's the Machiavellian truth. Nice men are tools. They get used. They get discarded. They get replaced. Powerful men are not nice. They are precise. They are measured. They are controlled. They are calculated. And it starts by slaughtering that little voice inside you that still begs for acceptance. You don't need permission. You don't need validation. You don't need to explain yourself. You need only one thing: the willingness to become feared. Not feared by others, but feared by your former self. Because once you kill the servant inside you, the ruler awakens. And from that moment forward, your life stops being about fitting in and starts being about standing above. Powerful men do not arrive loudly. They don't burst into the room trying to prove themselves. They don't chase attention. They don't beg for acknowledgement. They arrive with presence, not through their voice, but through their silence. Not through noise, but through stillness. Not through arrogance, but through gravity. You see, presence is not something you announce. It is something that others feel. And that begins with one simple law. You don't move like everyone else. Most people rush. They walk fast. They talk fast. They fidget. They interrupt. Why? Because they're desperate to impress. They're desperate to be accepted. They're desperate to be seen. But predators don't rush. Predators don't hurry. Predators wait, calm, still, calculating until it's time to strike. So when you walk into a room, you do not look for permission. You don't glance around hoping for approval. You don't nervously smile to win favor. Number. You observe. You absorb. You let everyone else scramble to prove themselves while you stand still, grounded, immovable. Your posture speaks before your mouth does. Your stillness unsettles them. Your silence forces them to wonder what you're thinking. And that is where your power begins. Understand this. The man who speaks first loses, because the one who rushes to speak reveals his hunger. He reveals his insecurity. He reveals his weakness. But the man who waits, the man who holds silence, he becomes the center of the room without saying a word. He makes others reveal themselves first. He extracts their fears, their doubts, their desperation before he even opens his mouth. This is why silence is control. Talking does not make you dominant. It makes you predictable. The quiet man is the threat, because no one knows what he's thinking. And when he finally does speak, people lean in, because his words are rare, because his words carry weight, because his words sound final. That's how rulers move. That's how generals move. That's how kings in exile speak before they reclaim their throne. They don't compete for attention. They don't fight to be heard. They behave as if they've already won. And people can feel it. So here is your practice. When you walk into a room, slow down, breathe deeper, sit or stand as if you have nowhere to be and nothing to prove. Don't be the man chasing energy. Be the man who creates gravity. Because when you speak, it won't be to impress. It will be to decide. Every sentence you deliver will sound like the end of the discussion, not the beginning of one. And when others speak, you wait. You let them fill the air. You let them reveal what they fear, what they want, what they need. You don't chase. You don't interrupt. You don't scramble to prove yourself. Instead, you watch, you measure, and you calculate. That is presence. That is dominance. Soon, people will start to calibrate themselves to you. They will adjust their tone when they see yours. They will change their posture when they notice yours. They will measure their words against your silence. And when you do speak, your words will carry a finality they cannot escape. Because deep down, they'll feel it. You are not competing. You've already chosen yourself. If they respect you, good. If they don't, better. Because indifference to approval is the highest form of power. And here's the Machiavellian truth. If the room wasn't yours when you entered, by the time you leave, they'll remember it as if it always was. Not because you demanded it, not because you begged for it, but because you carried yourself like the man who never had to. That is the art of presence. That is how you own the room, not with noise, not with arrogance, but with silence, stillness, and unshakable gravity. Words are not just sounds. They are weapons. And most men misuse them. Listen carefully the next time you hear an average man speak. He ends every sentence like a question, seeking approval. He fills the silence with, maybe, I think, I'm not sure. He laughs nervously to soften his words. He apologizes for existing before he even makes his point. That is not speech. That is surrender. That is a man begging for permission to exist. But Machiavelli understood something most men never will. Power is not in the words. Power is in the delivery. It's not always what you say, it's how you say it. When you speak with certainty, people don't analyze your logic. They feel your conviction. And because humans are emotional, not logical, they will follow conviction before they follow truth. Think about that. People don't follow the man who is right. They follow the man who sounds like he cannot be wrong. So, what does a Machiavellian voice sound like? It's slow. It's calm. It's final. Each sentence is delivered as if it's a decree, not an idea. Your tone carries the weight of inevitability. You speak not as if you're asking to be heard, but as if your words have already been decided upon and the world is just catching up. This is why, when you enter a room, you don't need to dominate the airwaves. You don't need to speak often. Because the more you speak, the more chances you give others to decode you, to challenge you, or worse, to stop fearing you. So, you speak less, but you mean more. And when you do speak, you burn the weakness out of your words. No filler. No softeners. No apologies. Never say, I'm just saying, I could be wrong. I don't know if this makes sense. These are escape hatches for the weak. Burn them. Kill them. Say what you mean and then leave it there. Do not over-explain. Do not justify. Do not apologize. Let others choke on the silence that follows. Because silence, after a strong statement, is terrifying. It dares people to challenge you. And most will not. Why? Because your silence forces them to question themselves instead of questioning you. Understand this. Your true message is not the words. It is the tone. The tone is what people remember. The tone is what tells them exactly where you stand in the hierarchy. You want to rise? Then lower your pitch. Slow your tempo. Cut the nervous energy out of your voice. Sound like a man who has nothing to prove and everything under control. Sound like a man who has already made up his mind and expects the world to adjust. That is how rulers speak. That is how generals command. That is how kings announce themselves before they take back their throne. And when someone dares to challenge you, remember this rule. Never defend, never justify, never debate. You don't owe explanations. You don't owe clarity. You don't owe validation. If they press, you simply redirect. I agree. Or better, that's incorrect. And then you move on. Why? Because when you refuse to debate, you signal something terrifying. That your reality is not up for negotiation. That is how you control a room without ever raising your voice. Because confidence is not volume. Confidence is gravity. It is the invisible weight behind your words. It is the calm certainty that when you speak, others should listen. Not because you shouted the loudest, but because your tone carried authority they could not ignore. From now on, you do not speak to be heard. You speak as if your words are law. You speak as if you cannot be denied. You speak like a man who is not competing because he already won. That is the Machiavellian voice. That is how rulers speak. You can walk tall. You can move with authority. You can speak like a ruler. But if your emotions still belong to everyone else, you are not powerful. You are exposed. This is where most men fail. They master presence. They master speech. But a single insult can shatter them. One rejection, and they spiral. A compliment, and they melt. A moment of silence and they panic. That is not power. That is weakness wrapped in a costume. And it makes you easy to control. Because here is the truth. Most men are laughably easy to manipulate. Tell them they're not good enough, and they'll over-explain. Tell them they're amazing, and they'll chase you. Pull away emotionally, and they'll beg for connection. That is not dominance. That is programming. And until you break that code, you will always be a tool for someone else's agenda. So, what is the solution? You must become psychologically unreachable, not emotionless, not robotic, but unshakable. You feel everything, but you act on nothing, unless it serves your purpose. Someone insults you, you don't explain. You don't defend. You observe. You extract data. What are they trying to get from me? What weakness are they trying to expose? Someone praises you? You don't melt. You don't bask in validation. You analyze. Why are they complimenting me now? What do they want in return? Someone ignores you? You don't panic. You don't chase. You become even colder. Because silence is not your wound. It is your weapon. This is what it means to build a fortress inside your own mind. Your emotions are real, but irrelevant unless weaponized. You are angry? Good. Channel it. Convert it into fuel for your ambition. You are insulted? Excellent. Store it. Use it as leverage when the time is right. You are doubted? Perfect. Stay silent. Let your results deliver the revenge. That is the Machiavellian mind. Not reactive. Not needy. Not dependent. Because once people know how to move you, they know how to control you. And once they can control you, you are no longer dangerous. You are manageable. And manageable men are discarded the moment they lose usefulness. So here is your training. From this point forward, you kill the need to be understood. You kill the need to explain yourself. You kill the need to prove your worth to anyone. You do not exist to be understood. You exist to move the world strategically, surgically, silently. You kill the fear of rejection, because rejection is not a wound. It is intelligence. It tells you where your power has no effect yet. And most importantly, you kill the habit of emotional reaction, because emotions are not commands. They are signals. Signals you can weaponize if you refuse to act on them impulsively. This is how you become untouchable. This is how you stop being predictable. This is how you transform from a man who reacts into a man who calculates. When you are calm under insult, when you are cold under pressure, when you are unmoved by praise, people stop trying to control you because they realize something terrifying. You are the one man they cannot move. That is the birth of true power, not posture, not words, not appearance, but identity. When your identity is no longer controlled by others, you stop being part of their game. You become the one who sets the rules. And in that moment, you become psychologically unreachable. Most men crumble when they hear the word no. They treat rejection like death. They see it as proof of their unworthiness, as confirmation that they should shrink back, stay small, remain invisible. But rejection is not the end. It is the beginning. Think of the generals, rulers, kings, and emperors of history. Do you believe they reached power without rejection? Without being doubted, dismissed, denied? Every powerful man you admire has been told, "You're not enough. You don't belong. You will fail." And yet, those men rose. Why? Because they understood something most never will. Rejection is information. It is not a wound. It is intelligence, When someone rejects you, they are not destroying you. They are revealing themselves. They are showing you where their loyalty lies, what they value, and where their limits of belief are. That is gold. That is data. That is leverage. But weak men misinterpret it. They see rejection as a verdict, not as a signal. And so they fold. They become smaller. They give up their pursuit. That is why they remain at the bottom. Machiavelli would tell you this. The man who fears rejection is unfit to rule. The man who embraces rejection, who feeds on it, who grows stronger because of it, is unstoppable. Here is the shift you must make. Every time someone rejects you, they hand you a gift. A woman rejects your interest? Good. She has saved you from wasting energy on someone who cannot recognize value. A business deal falls through? Good. That no revealed where the true boundaries are and showed you who cannot be trusted to move with vision. A friend doubts you? Good. You have identified someone who would not stand with you in battle. Every no is fuel. Fuel to sharpen your resolve. Fuel to expose weak links. Fuel to refine your path. And here is the Machiavellian twist. Rejection can also be turned into power against the one who delivered it. How? By refusing to chase. By refusing to beg. By refusing to explain yourself. Most men, after rejection, try to win approval back. They overcompensate. They send long messages. They do favors. They seek validation. And in that moment, they become slaves. You will do the opposite. You accept rejection like stone. You nod. You stay silent. You move on. Do you realize how terrifying that is? When someone expects you to break and you remain unshaken? When someone expects you to argue and you give them nothing? When someone expects you to chase and instead you disappear? That silence is not weakness. It is dominance. It forces them to question themselves. It forces them to wonder if they made a mistake. Because deep down, most people reject others, not from strength, but from insecurity. They want to see if you will collapse. They want to confirm their own power. And when you refuse to collapse, when you refuse to chase, when you refuse to care, you reverse the power. Now they are the ones doubting. Now they are the ones rethinking. This is how rulers turn rejection into attraction. This is how leaders turn denial into loyalty. This is how kings turn no into fuel for conquest. From this moment forward, you will never fear rejection again. You will hunt it. You will crave it. Because rejection is the fire that burns away weakness. It is the filter that removes the unworthy from your circle. It is the whetstone that sharpens your will to a deadly edge. When the world tells you no, you don't collapse. You grow colder. You grow sharper. You grow more dangerous. Because every no is just the world's way of saying, not yet. And the man who is patient, the man who is relentless, the man who cannot be broken by denial, is the man who takes everything in the end. So remember this: rejection is not the wall. It is the weapon, and in your hands, it becomes the sharpest one of all. You've walked with presence. You've spoken with power. You've mastered silence, control, and rejection. But all of it means nothing unless you transform into what Machiavelli admired most: a man who cannot be touched, a man who cannot be read, a man who cannot be stopped. This final transformation is not about appearance, not about posture, not even about voice. It is about identity. Listen carefully. Most men are easy to read. You can tell when they're nervous. You can tell when they're angry. You can tell when they're desperate. Their emotions bleed through their face, their tone, their movements. And because they are readable, they are predictable. And because they are predictable, they are controllable. A Machiavellian man is different. He is a mask, a fortress, a black box. You cannot tell what he's thinking. You cannot tell what he feels. You cannot tell whether he is weak or strong, afraid or confident, interested or indifferent. This unreadability makes him terrifying because people fear what they cannot measure. They fear what they cannot predict. They fear what they cannot control. So you cultivate mystery. You strip away obvious tells. You stop broadcasting your emotions like a fool. You become calm when others expect rage. You become silent when others expect explanation. You become still when others expect panic. And in that stillness, you grow untouchable. Think of a ruler on a throne. His enemies plot, his allies scheme, and yet he sits unmoved. Not because he feels nothing, but because no one deserves access to his inner world. That is your final weapon. Emotional privacy. The world only sees what you choose to reveal. Everything else is locked away, buried behind a wall of discipline. But unreadability alone is not enough. You must also be unstoppable. What does that mean? It means you live by strategy, not emotion. You move with intention, not reaction. Every setback becomes a lesson. Every insult becomes leverage. Every rejection becomes fuel. You don't break. You don't slow down. You don't stop. And here is the secret. The world cannot destroy a man who refuses to stop. He may be delayed. He may be opposed. He may be underestimated. But in the end, he always wins. Because persistence, when paired with strategy and control, is the deadliest force on earth. That is the Machiavellian transformation. From weak to untouchable. From nervous to unreadable. From breakable to unstoppable. When people look at you, they no longer see a man who needs approval, validation, or permission. They see a force. They see inevitability. They see someone who cannot be moved. And once the world recognizes you as inevitable, they stop resisting. They start submitting. They begin to orbit around your gravity. This is the final stage. This is the death of the obedient version of yourself. This is the birth of someone dangerous, someone unreadable, someone unstoppable. And once you step into that identity, once you refuse to return to weakness, there is no going back. You are no longer a man chasing the world's approval. You are a man the world cannot ignore. Untouchable, unreadable, unstoppable. That is your destiny. If you are willing to kill who you were and embrace who you must become.